How's it going, everybody? I am AV Obsessed, and if you're watching this video on my channel, that means that you probably are too. And I am back with another video review of another bookshelf speaker. This time I am looking at the Bowers & Wilkins 705 S3s, which are the biggest bookshelf speakers in the 700 series from Bowers & Wilkins.
Have you seen the mess I've been looking.
We're just talking about the dimensions of the speakers. At first, you're talking about a pretty large bookshelf speaker, standing, if you're counting just the cabinet only at first, at a 13.6 inches tall. And then when you add in the height of the tweeter, you're talking about a 16.3 inch tall bookshelf speaker. And then it's fairly narrow at 7.6 inches wide. And then depth, you're looking at another 13.3 inches. And they weigh in at about 21.1 pounds each. So you're gonna want some good sturdy speaker stands to set these guys on, because they are pretty big and heavy for bookshelf speakers. Talking about the audio specifications from the manufacturer, they rate these at 88 dB sensitivity at 8 ohm nominal impedance, but then it also does say that the minimum impedance is 3.7 ohms. So you're going to probably want an amplifier that is capable of driving a 4 ohm load. Although that 88 dB sensitivity does mean that it doesn't take a ton of power to get these speakers to play loudly. And for example, I ran them for a while off of the Rotel A8 integrated, which is a 30 watt per channel into 8 ohm integrated amplifier. And it handled these speakers just fine. It drove them very well. But also, like, if you watched my video on that Rotel A8, which if you haven't, you should, that thing seems to be able to drive everything, even though it's only rated at 30 watts. But yeah, 88 dB at 8 ohms, 3.7 ohm minimum. Recommended amplifier power is minimum of 30 watts and maximum of 120 watts. And then frequency response, they rate between 50 hertz and 28 kilohertz, which we will see in the graphs when I bring those in later. And then, yeah, driver specifications, you've got a 1 inch, what they call a decoupled carbon dome. And they also call it a solid body dome tweeter. And I did take the grills off, so you can see some pictures of what the tweeter looks like with the little protective metal grill taken off. And then below that, the only driver that's actually in the speaker cabinet is the 6.5 inch continuum cone mid-range / bass woofer. And then the speaker is rear ported, and it is bi-wireable / bi-ampable with some very nice looking hardware on the back of the speakers. Although the hardware looks super nice, but the banana plugs actually still only plug in about halfway when you plug your banana plugs into even these speakers with this really nice looking hardware on the back.
Talk to me when I look alright. The features in my face are enough to form a present smile. The people I just met a while ago, to help lift off this heavy weight and push it back another day. I know it's happening anyway, so what the hell's another day? Have you seen the mess I've been? I've been looking for it. It's gone away for now, but I know it's coming back around, so I'm looking out.
Now, I ran these speakers using primarily my main setup here in the living room, which is the Marantz Cinema 30 AV receiver, RCA preamp outputs going out to the Rotel RB1590, which is just the big, like heavy duty, it's like an 80 something pound dual mono 350 watt per channel amplifier, which is just massive overkill for these bookshelf speakers, but you know, I wanted to obviously drive them to their maximum, but then I also did run them for a couple of days just directly off of the amplification that's built into the Marantz Cinema 30. And for basically an entire day, when I had a day off of work, I was listening to these speakers, just powering them with the basically the front end system or setup from my previous video where I was talking about using the Rotel A8 integrated with the Blue Sound Nano. That system drove these speakers just fine, and I felt like I was getting the best out of them that I could, even with that extremely affordable integrated amplifier and high-res audio streamer. So that video that I made where I was saying like you can buy that as a front end and scale up to much more expensive speakers, these speakers kind of are were a really good test for that, and that system passed with flying colors because it sounded great through that. And actually, the tone controls on the front of the Rotel came in handy. That's kind of a little bit of a hint at what I'm going to get to later when I actually talk about the measurements on these speakers. I'm just going to go ahead and start the sound quality portion of the video off by talking about the actual frequency response. And I might as well put the graphs up right away. You're going to see right away in this graph, well, for one thing, there are three lines. There's a white, there's a blue, and there's a red. The white line is no port plug whatsoever. The blue line is with just a little foam ring in there, and the red is with the port completely plugged. And you'll see that like at that initial 45 dB bump that I always get in my room, basically the room gain at 45 decibels, blocking the port completely drops the bass by about 5 decibels. And then just having the foam ring in there only drops it by about 2 decibels. And then with the port wide open, the like room gain, I'm getting about a 5 dB room gain in here because the reference volume is supposed to be 75 dB. You can see that white line at 45 hertz is going right up to 80 decibels. So yeah, 5 dB room gain in the bass. It's actually like not bad though. Like it doesn't sound boomy in the room, to me at least. Maybe it's because I'm used to the way that things sound in this room. There are a few problem areas, and they're kind of bigger problems. There's a big dip right at 180 hertz. If you watched my initial impressions video about these speakers, I was talking about how I wasn't getting a lot of like mid bass, and I think that that's pretty much what I was hearing, was that big dip at 180 hertz. So that's going to be your like lower mid-range upper bass region. There's a big, you know, I think it's slightly more than a 5 dB scoop there. And then there's this big, huge, wide trough in the upper mid-range from 1K to 3K, where, I mean, you're only down like 2.5, 3 dB, but it goes all the way from 1 to 3K. And then from 3,500 hertz and up, there's a, from 3,500 hertz up to about 18,000 hertz, there's a really big rise in treble energy coming from these speakers, almost a 5 decibel increase in output. And that definitely is noticeable. In my first impressions video, I said that I was pretty impressed by the treble from these speakers. But then after listening to them for a couple of days, I started to feel more like what I was feeling that first day wasn't like impressive treble. It was more of shock and awe because the treble is just so boosted. It's definitely to the point where some songs that are recorded a little bit more sibilantly, you're going to be reaching for the volume control and turning the volume down, with these speakers. And that's really too bad, because playing them at very high volumes, I never really felt like I was experiencing or hearing any misbehavior coming from these drivers. Like, this woofer and this tweeter are very good drivers, because I basically playing some songs with like very low bass, like down into the like low 30s or 30 hertz, playing at fairly loud volumes. I never heard any distortion coming from this 6.5-inch continuum cone woofer. And then, yeah, the high frequencies at 90 dBs plus, this tweeter just never showed any signs of distortion, but the not very well balanced frequency response was the only thing that was ruining it for me. So that actually kind of makes me wonder, I should look it up and see if he's done this. I wonder if Danny Ritchie from GR Research has done a crossover fix on these speakers, because if these speakers had a more balanced crossover network, because I'm pretty confident that these drivers are not the issue. I'm pretty confident that the crossover, if it was a little bit more balanced so that they could bring the woofer response in line a little bit more with what this tweeter is putting out, like, these would be some incredible speakers. And that is going to lead me into the next segment of the video, because the thing that's incredible about them is the imaging. So soundstage and imaging is by far these speakers' strongest suit. I'll have to find the song and like put the name of the song and the artist up on the screen. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but it's a song that most people aren't going to actually like, especially the people who are in my audience aren't going to necessarily like this song, because it's a very electronic song. But there's a part in this song where the female vocalist says, "You can hear me in your mind," and then she whispers, "Your mind." And when she says that part where she's whispering 100% sounded like it was coming from slightly behind me and off to my left. Like, if I didn't know better, I would have thought that somehow came out of my left surround speaker, because it did not remotely sound like it came from the speakers in the front of the room. That's how well these speakers can cast sounds around the room. Like, most of the time when you're hearing that kind of thing with imaging, you can still tell that it's coming from the speaker in front of you, but it'll like kind of wrap around the room and sound like it's coming from like off to the side or maybe even slightly behind you. But with that part of that song on these speakers, it 100% sounded like it was coming from behind me and off to the left. That was the first day I was listening to these speakers. That's like super impressed me. And then just like general, like listening to music with these speakers and watching a lot of TV shows and stuff and movies and stuff like that. These things really, 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 like, just, for one, they completely aurally disappear. And that is largely, I'm sure, because of the design, where the woofer actually does sit a little bit proud of the front baffle. And then this tweeter being completely decoupled from the main cabinet in its own little like Nautilus tube design element here. So there's just nothing for the treble to diffract off of. And there's very little for the mid-range and bass to diffract off of as well. Just really makes it so that these speakers just completely aurally disappear into your room. And songs that are recorded properly, like the vocalist will sound like they are coming directly from the center of the room, and you'll hear, usually the drums will sound like they're coming from behind the vocalist, and then you'll hear like guitarists on the left and the right of the singer, and it's just the precision that you're getting from the imaging from these speakers is next level in comparison to anything that I have reviewed on my channel so far, and probably anything that I have actually heard in my own space. So the way that these speakers can image and like just cast such a huge soundstage and image so precisely. It almost makes it even more of a letdown that the frequency response isn't what I was hoping it would be, because if the frequency response was great and the imaging is great, these would be almost like a perfect speaker. So that's why, I mean, maybe, like I said, if Danny Ritchie from GR Research has done a speaker upgrade kit for these would be amazing candidates for that kind of an upgrade, because like if you could actually get the frequency response in line with these would be some incredible speakers. So that is my take on the Bowers & Wilkins 705 S3s. And it honestly kind of makes me wonder if the rest of the 700 series has a pretty similar sound signature, or if I had the towers, would the mid-range be more in line to what the tweeter is capable of outputting, because it would have a dedicated mid-range, being that it's a three-way system with a dedicated mid-range and either 2 or 3 6.5-inch woofers, depending on if you have the 702 or the 703 towers. I really would love to check out a pair of the towers in the 700 series range to see, because I mean, I'm still incredibly impressed with these speakers, but also a little bit disappointed with them at the same time. I feel like the crossover could use some work. But if you guys have any experience with B&W, because this is actually my first experience having B&W products in my own space, like I've heard them a lot at audio shows like Xpona and the Home Entertainment Show in Southern California. And then also like they have these at basically every one of the Magnolia Best Buys out there. Like, so I've heard them many times, but never in my own space. And being the first time that I've heard them in my own space, like I said, very impressed by some aspects of the speakers, but also kind of disappointed in others. So yeah, I want to hear what you guys think, what kind of experiences you guys have had with B&W, and what you would recommend instead of these speakers, because like these are $3,400 for a pair at full MSRP. So there are tons of speakers that you could buy instead of these. So leave those recommendations down in the comments. And if you guys liked this video, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to grow to the point where I can actually get some of these manufacturers to send me review samples, so I don't have to continuously be buying them and then returning the speakers to the stores that I'm buying them from. So the faster we can get up to, somewhere around 10,000 subscribers, the more likely I will be able to get review samples from manufacturers. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell so that you guys are notified when I put out new videos, and I will see you in the next one.